while spring break travelers face 3-hour security lines and TSA agents work without pay. The Senate spent its Sunday session arguing over whether voting should be as hard or as easy as getting a pass to the local recreation center.
It's a classic case of legislative whiplash, Paige. You have people literally stuck in the atrium of the Atlanta airport because there aren't enough security lanes open. And a few blocks away in D.C., the Senate is debating whether to overhaul federal elections in the middle of a government shutdown. It's a lot to untangle.
It is. We're in day 34 of a partial government shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security. This all started back on February 14th, and it's essentially a high-stakes standoff over how the government handles immigration enforcement.
Right. And this human cost is finally hitting the front page. The Department of Homeland Security says that at least 366 TSA officers have already quit since the shutdown began. If you're at an airport in Houston or Atlanta right now, you're feeling that in the form of 3-hour wait times. The transcript from yesterday shows that Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York is putting the blame squarely on the other side of the aisle.
Schumer was very direct. He said, and I'm quoting the record here, "Yesterday, the Republicans once again blocked the Senate's ability to finally start paying our TSA workers. These workers have gone now for weeks without pay." He's framing this as a choice: pay the workers now or keep them tied to these much larger fights over ICE policies.
And that's the heart of the deadlock. The reason we're in a shutdown at all goes back to January, with the killing of Alex Preddy by CBP agents in Minneapolis. Since then, Senate Democrats have been refusing to fund ICE unless Republicans agree to specific reforms. Things like body cameras, judicial warrants for home entries, and a ban on agents wearing masks during operations.
But the Republican side sees it differently. Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida argued that the mask ban is actually a safety issue for the agents themselves. He cited what he called a 10-fold increase in assaults on ICE officers and said activists are cataloging photos of employees online to hunt them. He called the Democratic strategy hostage-taking, not governance.
It's a complete stalemate on the policy, which is why the Senate is now looking at a break-the-glass maneuver to try and change the mood. They are moving to confirm one of their own, Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma, to be the next Secretary of Homeland Security.
Which is a rare move. Usually, the Senate doesn't pluck a sitting member to head an agency in the middle of a crisis like this. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska was on the floor yesterday, pushing hard for a bipartisan vote. He said Mullin is the ideal candidate to lead DHS right now because of his temperament and his ability to work across the aisle.
Sullivan's argument was essentially, look, we all know he's qualified, so stop making excuses about your home state politics or future runs for governor and just confirm him so we can get this department running again. He's hoping a strong bipartisan vote for Mullin creates the momentum to finally pass a funding bill.
The transcript shows he was pretty blunt about the private conversations he's been having. He said his colleagues often tell him, "Hey Dan, I know I should be a yes on this, but," and then they list their political reasons. Sullivan told the chamber, "I have heard too many buts. You know he is a qualified individual."
But even as they talk about momentum, the rhetoric is still incredibly sharp. Schumer actually brought up the war in Iran yesterday to highlight what he called unhinged leadership at the top. He quoted President Trump saying, "I may have a plan, or I may not," regarding the military strategy. Schumer's point was that this impulsiveness is trickling down to the airport chaos, like the plan to deploy ICE agents to airports starting today to cover for the missing TSA workers.
Which Schumer called an idiotic plan with no training and no planning. So we have this massive DHS crisis on one hand, and then we have what happened with the Veterans Bill.
Yeah. Let's talk about the SAVE Act hijack, because this is where the parliamentary nerds really get to lean in. If you look at the Senate calendar, you'll see S 1383. Originally, that was a bipartisan bill about a Veterans Advisory Committee on Equal Access. Very straightforward, very focused on helping veterans.
But that is not what S 1383 is anymore. Republican leadership used a process called procedural layering to essentially gut that veterans bill and replace it with the SAVE America Act. It's a massive overhaul of federal voting requirements. Why use the veterans bill as a vehicle?
Think of it like a legislative Trojan horse. It's a bill that's already cleared certain hurdles, so you swap out the engine and the seats while the car is moving. By doing this, Majority Leader John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota, is forcing a recorded vote on voter citizenship verification, something Republicans believe will be a winner for them in the 2026 midterms.
Thune's argument on the floor was all about making the requirements sound everyday and mundane. He said, Republicans aren't asking for much here. We are just asking to make our elections as secure as the local rec center. He pointed out that in D.C., you need a photo ID to use a recreation center to play basketball, but not necessarily to vote there.
It's a catchy line, but the policy behind it is incredibly complex. The SAVE Act would require valid physical photo identification and mandate that states use a Department of Homeland Security database to re-verify the citizenship of everyone on their voter rolls. Thune says this is just common sense because you need a photo ID for a library card or an I-9 employment form.
Except the implementation isn't quite as simple as a library card. The research shows that this would be a massive lift for local governments. The Brennan Center for Justice warns that these new requirements could potentially block 21 million Americans from voting, particularly those who don't have traditional IDs or who live in rural areas. And the price tag? About $510 million in unfunded mandates for counties to implement this right before the 2026 elections.
And that 2026 date is the key. Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah was very open about the stakes yesterday. He argued that blue states are defiantly refusing to share their voter registration data with the federal government because they don't want to find non-citizens on their rolls. He framed it as a meta-law, the law that determines who gets to make all the other laws.
Lee was quite detailed on the technical side, too. He talked about the SAVE database already existing within DHS and argued that states should be running their voter rolls through it constantly. He said it's about making it easy to vote while also making it hard to cheat.
But wait, Paige, look at the irony here. Lee is arguing that we need the Department of Homeland Security to run these voter roll checks. But the Department of Homeland Security is currently shut down, and the people who run that database aren't being paid. Lee acknowledged this, calling it regrettable, to put it extremely mildly.
He actually used the shutdown as a reason why they need to pass the SAVE Act now. It's this circular logic where everything is connected: the border, the airport lines, the veterans bill, and the 2026 elections. But the Democrats aren't buying the rec center analogy. Schumer called it a radical culture war amendment that was a total waste of time.
The tension really peaked when Thune accused Democrats of hypocrisy. He said Schumer claimed to support voter ID on Tuesday, but then Democrats blocked a Republican bill on Thursday that would have codified it. Thune said, if that is Democrats supporting voter ID, I would hate to see what them opposing it would look like.
So where does that leave us? We have a nominee for DHS Secretary waiting in the wings, a veterans bill that's now a voting rights bill, and thousands of federal workers entering another week without a paycheck. It feels like the Senate is moving everything forward at once, but nothing is actually crossing the finish line yet.
That's the Thune strategy, layering all these high-priority items together so that at some point, the pressure becomes so great that one side has to blink. But with the midterms looming and the border situation becoming a daily headache for travelers, nobody seems ready to blink just yet.
As the Sunday session finally wound down, Senator Rick Scott issued a challenge that felt a bit different from the usual partisan sparring. He brought up his No Budget, No Pay Act again, and he was pretty biting about it. He noted that the average TSA agent makes about $50,000 a year and is currently working for free, while senators make $174,000 and haven't missed a dime.
He really leaned into that contrast. He said he didn't understand how a senator could look at these unpaid TSA agents in the eye, walk to the gate in front of all of them, pass Americans who just waited in line for 4 hours, and not feel some shame. It was a rare moment where a senator suggested that if the people they represent are feeling the pain of a shutdown, the lawmakers should be feeling it in their own bank accounts too.
It's a sentiment that certainly resonates with anyone who spent their Sunday in a security line. That's Floor Notes for today.
Stay informed out there, and maybe pack an extra book if you're headed to the airport. We'll see you next time.